The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape of the alien planet. Jake stood behind a large boulder, breathing heavily. His heart raced as he scanned the area with his binoculars. The sounds of distant explosions echoed in the air, but right now, all he could focus on was the enemy camp ahead. Jake was a soldier, one of many fighting in a war that seemed endless. The aliens they faced were ruthless, known for their brutal tactics and cruelty. He and his squad had been sent on a reconnaissance mission, a task that usually involved gathering information and staying hidden. But today felt different. Today, Jake felt a weight on his chest that he couldn't shake off. As he peered through the binoculars, he saw movement near the center of the camp. His stomach twisted as he focused on a figure tied to a post. A human woman, her long hair tangled and dirty. Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was Lily. He recognized her instantly. She was a soldier like him, part of a rescue team that had gone missing weeks ago. "Jake, what do you see?" whispered Tom, one of his squadmates, who had crept up beside him. Jake lowered the binoculars, his hands shaking. "It's Lily. They've got her. We have to do something." Tom's eyes widened. "Are you sure? We're not supposed to engage. We need to report back." "I can't just leave her there," Jake said, his voice low but firm. "We can't let them hurt her. She's one of us." Tom looked conflicted. He knew the orders, but he also knew Jake. They had fought together for years, and Jake's heart was as big as his courage. "All right, but we need to be careful. If we're caught, it's all over." Jake nodded, his mind racing. He had to come up with a plan. They couldn't just rush in. The camp was heavily guarded, and the aliens would not hesitate to kill them. He scanned the camp again, noting the positions of the guards and the layout of the area. "Let's head back and gather the others," Jake finally said. "We need a proper plan." As they crept back through the rocky terrain, Jake's thoughts were filled with worry. Lily had been a bright light in the dark days of the war. She always had a smile, even when the situation seemed hopeless. The image of her tied up, in pain, haunted him. He couldn't fail her now. Back at their temporary base, Jake gathered the rest of the squad. There were 5 of them: Tom, Lisa, Mark, and Aaron. They all listened intently as Jake explained what he had seen. "We have to rescue her," he said fervently. "I know the risks, but we can't leave her to suffer at their hands." "What if we get caught?" Lisa asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Jake took a deep breath. "I understand the danger, but if we don't do this, we're no better than the aliens. We have to fight for our own people." Mark nodded slowly. "I agree with Jake. We've lost too many already. We can't let fear stop us from doing what's right." After a tense moment, the squad began to discuss tactics. They sketched a rough plan on the ground, using sticks to mark positions. Tom suggested they create a distraction to draw the guards away from Lily. Lisa proposed using smoke grenades to cover their approach. As they planned, Jake felt a surge of hope. They were just a small group of soldiers, but together they were stronger. They had faced many challenges before, but this one felt personal. They weren't just fighting for victory. They were fighting to save a friend. As night fell, the team prepared for the mission. They gathered their gear, checking their weapons and supplies. Jake felt a mix of excitement and fear. He knew they were stepping into a dangerous situation, but he couldn't let that stop him. Under the cover of darkness, they moved silently toward the enemy camp. The stars twinkled above them, but there was little light on the ground. Jake led the way, his heart pounding in his chest. He could hear his squad behind him, their footsteps soft against the rocky ground. When they reached the edge of the camp, Jake took a moment to observe. The guards were more numerous than he had expected, and the camp was filled with alien technology. strange lights blinking in the darkness. He felt a knot of fear tighten in his stomach, but he pushed it aside. "All right, stay low and stick to." "The shadows," he whispered. "We'll wait for the right moment." The squad moved carefully, avoiding the bright lights and keeping out of sight. Jake's eyes remained fixed on the center of the camp, where he could see Lily still tied to the post. She looked weak, but Jake could see the fire in her eyes. She was a fighter, just like him. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for the guards to change shifts. Finally, a group of aliens moved away from the post, laughing and chatting. It was their chance. Now. Jake hissed, and the squad sprang into action. They dashed across the open space, hearts racing. The aliens seemed unaware of their presence, their attention focused on each other. Jake reached the post first, quickly cutting the ropes that bound Lily's wrists. "Jake?" she whispered, her voice weak but full of hope. "You came for me." "Of course I did." "We need to get out of here," Jake replied, helping her to her feet. Just then, a loud alarm blared through the camp. The aliens had noticed something was wrong. Jake's heart sank. They had to move quickly. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Lily's hand as they sprinted toward the edge of the camp. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, and Jake knew they didn't have much time. As they ran, Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. He had come to save Lily, and now they were fighting for their lives. He couldn't let anything happen to her again. The space between them and freedom narrowed, and Jake's determination grew. They would escape, no matter the cost. Jake felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins as he held onto Lily's hand tightly. They ran through the shadows of the enemy camp, their hearts pounding. The alarm blared loudly, and the sound echoed in the night air. Jake could hear the aliens shouting, their voices filled with anger and confusion. They were looking for them. "Come on," Jake urged, pulling Lily along. She stumbled slightly, but quickly regained her footing. Despite her weakened state, there was a spark in her eyes that gave him hope. "Where are the others?" she asked, glancing around. Jake knew they had to regroup with the rest of the squad. "They're right behind us," he replied, glancing over his shoulder. He could see Tom, Lisa, Mark, and Aaron sprinting toward them, their faces set with determination. They had made it into the camp, and now they had to escape before the aliens caught up. Suddenly, a group of aliens appeared in front of them, blocking their path. They were tall, with green skin and sharp features. Jake's heart sank. There were too many to fight. He quickly scanned the area for another way out. Over there. He pointed to a narrow gap between two large crates. It was risky, but it was their only option. Jake pulled Lily closer and shouted, "Follow me." They dashed toward the gap, squeezing through just as the aliens shouted in their direction. Jake could feel the rush of air as one of the aliens swung a weapon at them, missing by inches. They made it through the opening and into a small alley. Between the crates, "Keep moving," Jake urged as they continued running, their breaths coming in quick gasps. The sound of footsteps grew louder behind them. They had to find a way out of the camp quickly. "Which way?" Lily asked, her voice strained from running. Jake looked around, trying to find a way out. The camp was a maze of crates, tents, and strange alien machinery. "This way," he said, leading them to the right. They turned a corner and saw a larger opening that led to a dark forest beyond the camp. "Look," Tom pointed. "That's our way out." They sprinted toward the opening, but just as they reached it, a loud explosion shook the ground. Jake stumbled, nearly losing his balance. He turned to see that one of the aliens had set off an alarm, and the camp was now in chaos. "Go! Go!" Jake shouted, pushing Lily forward. They burst through the opening and into the forest, the trees providing some cover from the chaos behind them. Once they were inside the trees, they slowed down, trying to catch their breath. The sounds of the camp faded slightly, but they knew. They were not safe yet. "Are we okay?" Mark asked, looking around nervously. Jake nodded, though he felt the weight of uncertainty. "For now. We need to keep moving and put some distance between us and the camp." Lily leaned against a tree, her face pale. "I'm sorry I dragged you into this. I thought I was done for." Jake shook his head. "You're safe now. That's what matters." He felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had saved her, but the mission was not over yet. As they moved deeper into the forest, Jake glanced at Lily. "What happened back there? How did they capture you?" Lily took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. "We were on a mission to rescue another group of soldiers. The aliens ambushed us. I fought hard, but they took me before I could escape." Jake frowned. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. I should have found you sooner." "It's not your fault," Lily said softly. "You came for me when it mattered most." The squad continued to move through the trees, staying low and quiet. Jake felt a sense of urgency. They needed to get back to their base and regroup before the aliens could track them down. Suddenly, Aaron stopped. "Wait, did anyone hear that?" Everyone paused, listening intently. In the distance, they could hear voices, the sound of aliens searching for them. Jake's stomach churned. They were close, and they needed to hide. "Quick! Behind those trees?" Jake whispered, motioning to a thick cluster of bushes nearby. The squad hurriedly crouched behind the foliage, holding their breath as the voices grew louder. The aliens moved through the forest, their voices harsh and angry. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silver light on the forest clearing. Jake and his squad sat quietly, catching their breath after their narrow escape from the alien camp. The air was cool, but the tension among them was thick. They had made it this far, but the danger was not over. Jake looked around at his friends. Lily sat beside him, her face still pale, but filled with determination. Tom, Lisa, Mark, and Aaron were close by, exchanging worried glances. They all knew the aliens would be searching for them, and they had to make a decision soon. "Okay, everyone," Jake said, breaking the silence. "We need to talk about our next move. We can't stay here for long. What do you suggest?" Lisa asked, her voice calm but serious. Jake took a deep breath. "We have two options. We can try to make our way back to the base, or we can go back and rescue more captives. We know there are still humans in that camp." Lily looked at Jake, her eyes wide. "But what if we get caught again? The aliens will be on high alert now." "I know," Jake replied, feeling the weight of the decision. "But if we leave those people behind, we're letting the aliens win. We have to do something." Mark nodded slowly. "I understand what you're saying, Jake. But we have to be careful. We're not in full strength, and we can't afford to lose anyone else." "True," Tom added. "But if we go back, we need a solid plan. We can't just rush in blindly." Jake thought for a moment, weighing their options. He felt a strong urge to save the others. The thought of leaving them behind made his stomach turn. But he also knew the risks were high. "Let's think about this," Jake said. "If we go back, we can use the element of surprise. The aliens won't expect us to return so soon. We have to find a way to get in and out quickly." Lily spoke up, her voice firm. "I want to help. I know the layout of the camp. I can guide us to where the captives are held." Jake looked at her with concern. "You've been through so much, Lily. Are you sure you're up for this?" She nodded, determination shining in her eyes. "I can do this, Jake. I want to help my fellow soldiers. We can't leave them behind." The squad exchanged glances, and Jake could see that they were starting to feel the same way. They were all in this together, and the idea of leaving innocent people behind was too much to bear. "All right," Jake said, his voice steady. "If everyone agrees, we'll go back. But we need to be smart about it. We'll wait until nightfall again. The darkness will help us stay hidden." Everyone nodded, their faces set with resolve. They would do this together, as a team. As the sun began to set, they made a plan. Jake, Lily, and the others took turns sharing ideas on how to approach the camp. They decided to use smoke grenades to create a diversion, just as Lisa had suggested earlier. This would help them get closer to the captives without being seen. Finally, night fell again, wrapping the forest in darkness. The squad gathered there, gear, checking their weapons and supplies one last time. Jake felt a mix of fear and excitement. They were going back into the heart of danger, but they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. "Let's move," Jake said, leading the way back to the enemy camp. The trees whispered around them, and the night felt alive with the sounds of insects and distant creatures. As they approached the camp, Jake felt his heart race. The glow of alien lights flickered in the distance, and the sound of alien voices echoed. They crept closer, staying low to the ground. The camp looked different now, more menacing under the cover of night. "Over there," Lily pointed to a group of crates. "That's where they keep the captives. I saw them when I was held there." Jake nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "Let's stick to the shadows and make our way over there. Remember the plan." They moved silently, glancing around to ensure no one was watching. As they neared the crates, they could see the entrance to a tent where the captives were held. Suddenly, a loud noise broke the silence. An alien guard shouted, and the squad froze in place. Jake's heart raced as he strained to listen. "Did you hear that?" Tom whispered, his eyes wide. Jake nodded. "We need to hurry. Let's create the distraction now." Lisa and Aaron moved to one side, readying the smoke grenades. Jake and Lily took cover behind a crate, watching closely. When Lisa and Aaron threw the grenades, a thick cloud of smoke erupted, filling the air with a swirling mist. "Now!" Jake shouted, and they rushed forward, using the smoke as cover. The chaos created by the smoke confused the guards, who began shouting and stumbling around. "Get to the tent!" Jake yelled, leading the way. They dashed through the smoke, adrenaline fueling their movements. As they reached the tent, Jake quickly unzipped the entrance. Inside, they found a group of terrified captives, their faces pale and drawn. "Stay calm. We're here to rescue you," Jake said, trying to reassure them. "We need to get you out of here." Lily stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're soldiers. Follow us, and we'll get you to safety." The captives nodded, hope lighting their eyes. They quickly gathered their belongings, and Jake led them out of the tent. Outside, the smoke was starting to clear, and the aliens were beginning to regroup. They had to move quickly. "Let's go," Jake urged, leading the group away from the tent and back into the shadows of the crates. The sound of alien footsteps echoed around them, but they pushed forward, staying close together. As they moved, Jake felt a surge of relief. They were rescuing people, making a difference. But they weren't out of danger yet. The aliens would be searching for them soon, and they needed to find a way to escape the camp completely. "Head for the trees," Jake shouted, spotting the edge of the forest just ahead. They sprinted toward the trees, their hearts racing with a mix of fear and excitement. Just as they reached the forest, a loud alarm blared again. The aliens had spotted them. Jake felt a rush of panic, but forced himself to stay focused. "Keep running," he yelled, urging everyone forward. They dashed into the trees, the sounds of the camp fading behind them. Once they were deep in the nice forest, they slowed down, panting heavily. They had made it, but they were still not safe. Jake turned to the captives. We need to keep moving until we're far away from the camp. Lily looked at Jake, her eyes filled with gratitude. You did it, Jake. We did it together. Jake smiled, feeling a sense of pride. They had faced danger and come out stronger. Together, they would find a way to safety. Asterisk, the forest was dark and quiet as Jake and the squad moved deeper into the trees. They had escaped the alien camp, but tensions were still high. The group of captives followed closely behind, their faces filled with a mix of relief and fear. Jake could feel the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. They were safe for now, but they needed to get far away from the camp before the aliens could regroup. Let's find a good place to rest for a moment, Jake said, glancing back at the captives. They looked tired and scared, but also hopeful. He wanted to give them a chance to recover. Lily nodded in agreement. There's a small clearing up ahead. We can rest there for a bit. They moved quickly to the clearing, a small open space surrounded by tall trees. The moonlight shone down, illuminating the area. Jake felt a sense of calm wash over him as they reached the clearing. Stay close, everyone, he said, looking around to ensure they were still safe. Once they were settled in the clearing, Jake turned to the group. I know this has been a long night. You are all very brave. We are going to get you home. The captives nodded, their faces showing relief. A man named Eric stepped forward. Thank you for coming for us. We thought we would never get out of there. Jake smiled. We couldn't leave you behind. We're a team, and we look out for each other. As they rested, Jake and the squad discussed their next steps. We can't stay here too long. Jake said, the aliens will be searching for us. We need to find a way back to our base and warn everyone. Do you think they will come after us? Lisa asked, concern in her voice. It's likely, Jake replied. But we have the advantage now. We know the area, and we have the element of surprise. If we stick together and stay smart, we can make it. After a short break, the squad gathered their strength and prepared to move again. All right, let's go, Jake said, his voice steady. We'll head toward the river. It should lead us back to the main path. The group set off, moving quietly through the trees. The night was cool, and the sounds of the forest surrounded them. Jake felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They had rescued the captives, but now they had to get them home safely. As they walked, Jake kept an eye on the trail ahead. He wanted to stay alert and avoid any surprises. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound nearby. He motioned for everyone to stop. Did you hear that? He whispered. The squad fell silent, listening carefully. The rustling grew louder, and Jake's heart raced. Everyone, get ready, he said, reaching for his weapon. Just then, a small animal darted out from behind a bush. It was a strange-looking creature, with bright eyes and a bushy tail. The group relaxed, letting out a nervous laugh. Looks like we're safe, Tom said, shaking his head. Jake smiled, but he knew they couldn't let their guard down. Let's keep moving. We need to stay focused. They continued through the forest, and after a while, they reached the river. The water flowed swiftly, reflecting the moonlight like a silver ribbon. Jake felt a sense of relief wash over him. They were close to the main path now. Follow the river, he instructed. It will lead us back to familiar territory. As they walked along the riverbank, Jake felt the tension begin to ease. The night air was cool and still as Jake and the group settled in the clearing. They had escaped the alien camp, but Jake knew they still had to be cautious. The thrill of their rescue was mixed with the fear of being caught again. Everyone, let's keep our voices low, Jake instructed, glancing around. The forest was dark, and the sounds of the night surrounded them, but he wanted to ensure they stayed alert. Lily sat beside him, her face still pale but determined. We've come a long way, Jake. I believe we can make it back to our base if we keep moving, Jake nodded, feeling the weight of her words. You're right. We need to stick together and stay focused. We can't let our guard down. As they rested, Jake could see the captives starting to relax. They were finally safe for the moment, but he knew the aliens would not give up easily. Do you think they'll find us? Eric asked, his voice low. I hope not, Jake replied. But we have to be ready. If we see any signs of trouble, we need to move quickly. After a short break, Jake decided it was time to get moving again. Let's head toward the river again. It will help us stay hidden. The group nodded, and they began to make their way through the forest. The trees loomed above them, and Jake could hear the sounds of the night creatures. He led the way, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. As they moved, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced over his shoulder, but there was nothing there. The forest felt alive, and he reminded himself to stay calm. Stay close, Jake said, keeping his voice steady. We're almost there. After a while, they reached the riverbank again. The water flowed swiftly, and Jake felt a sense of relief as they approached the familiar path. This will lead us back toward safety, he said, feeling hopeful. As they walked along the river, Jake felt the tension begin to lift. The sound of the rushing water was calming, and he could see the path ahead. But just as they were starting to relax, a loud noise broke the silence. Get down! Jake shouted, pushing everyone to the ground. They ducked behind some bushes as they heard the unmistakable sound of alien voices approaching. Jake's heart raced. The aliens had found their trail. We need to hide, he whispered urgently. They're close. Lily's eyes widened with fear, but she nodded, understanding the danger. They crawled deeper into the underbrush, holding their breath as the voices grew louder. Where did they go? One of the aliens shouted. They can't be far. Jake could see shadows moving in the distance. The aliens were searching for them, their bright eyes scanning the area. He felt a surge of adrenaline. They had to stay hidden. Wait for them to pass, he whispered, trying to keep everyone calm. As the aliens moved closer, Jake felt the tension in the air. He could see the fear in the eyes of the captives, and he wanted to reassure them. We'll get through this, he said softly. Just stay quiet. Finally, the aliens moved past their hiding spot, continuing their search. Jake let out a quiet sigh of relief. They had escaped this time, but he knew they had to keep moving. Now, Jake urged, and they crawled out from their hiding place, quickly getting back on their feet. Which way? Mark asked, looking. Around. Upstream, Jake replied. We need to get further away from the camp. As they moved along the river, they kept their eyes and ears open for any signs of danger. The forest started to feel like a maze, and Jake could sense the urgency in the air. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash from behind them. It was followed by the sound of alien voices shouting. They went this way. Follow the river. Run! Jake shouted, urging everyone forward. The noise behind them grew louder, and they had to move quickly to stay ahead. They sprinted along the riverbank, the sound of rushing water mixing with the pounding of their hearts. The captives struggled to keep up, but Jake kept encouraging them. We're almost there. Don't stop. Just as they rounded a bend in the river, Jake spotted a narrow path leading away from the water. This way, he called, darting onto the path. The others followed closely behind, their breaths coming in quick gasps. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the forest. Jake could hear the aliens still searching, their voices echoing behind them. He felt a surge of fear, but he pushed it aside. They had to keep moving. As they ran, Jake glanced back to see if they were being followed. Keep going, he shouted. Don't look back. They stumbled through the trees, the branches scratching at their arms and faces. The sounds of the aliens grew fainter, but Jake knew they had to stay alert. They couldn't let their guard down now. Finally, they reached a small clearing. The moonlight illuminated the area, and Jake quickly scanned the surroundings. "We need to rest here for a moment," he said, trying to catch his breath. The group huddled together, panting heavily. Jake felt a sense of relief wash over him, but he knew they couldn't stay long. "We need to come up with a plan," he said, looking at the squad. Lily spoke up, her voice steady. "We should split into 2 groups. One group can create a distraction, while the other goes back to the camp to rescue more captives." Jake considered her suggestion. "That could work, but we need to be careful. We don't want to lose anyone else." "I can help lead the distraction," Lily said. "I know the camp layout. I can draw their attention away from the captives." Jake looked at her, impressed by her bravery. "All right, but we have to make sure we stick to the plan. We'll need a signal to know when to move." Tom nodded. "We can use a flare. If the distraction works, we'll see the signal and know it's safe to go in." "Good idea," Jake sighed. "Let's get ready. We need to move quickly before the aliens realize we're gone." As they prepared, Jake felt a mix of fear and excitement. They were going back into danger, but this time they were ready. They had a plan, and they were fighting for their friends. Once everyone was set, they divided into 2 groups. Jake, Lily, and a few others would head back to the camp, while the rest would create a distraction. "Stay safe," Jake said to the other group as they prepared to part ways. "We'll see you soon." With that, they set off toward the alien camp again, their hearts pounding with determination. They were going to rescue more captives and fight for their fellow soldiers. As they approached the camp, Jake felt the tension in the air. The stakes were high, but they were ready to face whatever came their way. Together, they would make a stand. Jake, Lily, and the rest of the group moved quietly through the trees, making their way back to the alien camp. The night was dark, but the moonlight guided their path. Each step felt heavy with anticipation. They were going back into danger, but the thought of rescuing more captives pushed them forward. As they neared the camp, Jake signaled for everyone to stop. They crouched behind a large rock, peering at the scene before them. The camp was alive with activity. Aliens moved about, their voices harsh and filled with anger. It was clear they were looking for the escaped captives. "Look over there." Lily pointed to a group of aliens gathered near the center of the camp. "That's where they keep the captives." Jake nodded, feeling a surge of determination. "We have to create a distraction first. Once we do, we'll go in and get them out." Lily took a deep breath. "I lead the distraction. I can draw their attention away from the captives." "Are you sure?" Jake asked, concern in his eyes. "I'm sure," Lily replied, her voice steady. "I can do this." "All right," Jake said, feeling a mix of pride and worry. "Let's move into position. We'll wait for your signal." As they crept closer to the camp, Jake's heart raced. He could see the aliens talking among themselves, their eyes darting around as they searched for any signs of the escaped squad. The tension in the air was thick, but Jake knew they had to stay focused. Once they were in place, Jake turned to the group. "Remember the plan. Once Lily gives the signal, we move quickly. Stay together and watch each other's backs." The group nodded, their faces set with determination. They were all in this together, and they would do whatever it took to rescue their friends. Lily took a deep breath, then nodded to Jake. "I'm ready." With that, she moved out from behind the rock, stepping into the open. "Hey, over here!" she shouted, her voice ringing through the night. The aliens turned, their eyes widening in surprise. "What is that?" one of them shouted, pointing at Lily. Jake watched as Lily waved her arms, drawing the attention of the aliens. This was their chance. "Let's go," he shouted, and they rushed toward the tent where the captives were held. As they dashed forward, Jake could hear the aliens shouting behind them. "Get her! Don't let her escape!" They reached the tent, and Jake quickly unzipped the entrance. Inside, he could see the captives huddled together, their eyes filled with fear and hope. "Quick! We're here to rescue you," Jake shouted, trying to sound confident. "Follow us." The captives nodded, and Jake led them out of the tent. They emerged into chaos. The aliens were in disarray, trying to figure out what was happening. Lily had successfully drawn their attention, but they needed to move fast. "Let's go," Jake urged, leading everyone toward the edge of the camp. As they ran, Jake could hear the aliens shouting, their voices filled with anger. "They are escaping. Stop them." Jake led the group to the edge of the camp, where the trees began to thicken. They had to cross a small clearing to reach the safety of the forest. "Now," he shouted, pushing everyone forward. They sprinted. Across the clearing, the sound of alien footsteps growing louder behind them. Just as they reached the trees, Jake felt a jolt of panic. One of the